Now, I know all of you know about the maker movement. I go to places and there are people who've never heard of it, but I know you know that this is a global revolution. It's happening right now. It's a revolution in the way people solve problems, big and small, in the way they communicate with each other, in the way they share the problems and the solutions, so that if you see someone who solves something, you can download the actual files and make it better, and then re-upload it. And kids today know there's this global brain out there that's interested in their ideas. They share their ideas. Something as simple as YouTube. It's why they all run over with their cameras when they see something, right? Because it might get 4 million views, or their friends might see it. But either way, the world is interested in what other people can think and can do. And kids know that they have currency in this world. Now, we could talk about the business aspects of the maker movement, the supply chains it's going to disrupt, but what really interests me is how it impacts education. Because I really do think that the kids today are going to not only answer questions that we haven't asked yet, but they're going to use techniques that we haven't invented yet either. I know in my own case, when I stepped out of college, I had a job interview where they told me, we're going to invent something over the next couple of years that's going to revolutionize the way we do navigation in this world. We're going to make a machine that you can put in a submarine or a plane, and it will be able to tell where you are in the world with 10-meter accuracy. Weather. Just a few problems. The math is just the theory. The receivers we have aren't fast enough. The hardware isn't built yet. The software isn't written. The computers that we're going to write the software for don't exist yet either, but we're going to do it anyway. Would you like to be on the team? And what does a kid say to an invitation like that, right? They say yes. They step into invitations to change the world. Now, I didn't think that I knew how to do those things, and in fact, I didn't. In fact, none of us knew those things, but we did it anyway. And that was the beginnings of the GPS satellite navigation system. And now I have one on my phone. I barely remember the world the way it was before that existed. That's how I know that kids in our classrooms today are going to be answering questions that we haven't even thought of yet. The next wave of what the maker movement is bringing is a culmination of both the cyber-physical revolution that the internet is part of, that GPS is part of, and is transitioning into a cyber-biological revolution, where we are literally going to be programming cells and manipulating the DNA, the molecular building blocks of life. This is an absolutely fascinating time to be alive. And we have to give our kids the tools of how to solve these problems. We can't tell them what the answers are going to be. So when I started going to maker fairs and started learning more about the maker movement, I decided that this was a really important thing for education. And my partner and I, Gary Steger, decided to write a book to build a bridge between the maker movement and education. Not to tell teachers what to do, but to create parallels between the maker movement and the way we know kids learn through deep exploration of topics that interest them, and how we can use tried and true pedagogy like project-based learning to connect to modern technology. Now, I go all over the world, I talk to people about the tools of the maker movement, and really concentrate on these three, what we call the game changers in our book, the things we think are most likely to change education. Because just because something's maker movement doesn't mean it's good for school. Some things are too expensive, or too dangerous. Some things are just toys. But these things have key aspects that allow students to have agency over this incredibly technologically complex world. I'm going to show you a little bit about each of them: fabrication, physical computing, and programming. So fabrication, you've all seen 3D printers, right? It also includes laser cutters. These are computer controls things where you could design something that's never existed before and have a machine create it. I mean, literally, this is magical. You're making something out of nothing. Now, it's not important what the little plastic bit is at the end of the 3D print run. What's important is the design process. What's important is you're joining this world that is using 3D printers across all boundaries, for food technology to make consumer goods, for medical devices that are absolutely miraculous. Every museum now is 3D scanning its artifacts, everything they own, not just the ones on display. Brings a whole new meaning to primary source material. Now we can have physical primary source material, from dinosaur bones to virus models to Lincoln's death mask. People are using it like the Prado has a new exhibit where you can touch the art with 3D printing. People are using these things in really amazing ways, and so are schools, because the design tools are just this simple. It's literally child's play, like stacking blocks. And yet, look, there's a coordinate system. Things that are hard to do with paper and pencil come to life with 3D printing. Schools are using this to help students understand a complex design process that they're in charge of. Sometimes you make things just for fun. Sometimes you make things to help other people, like this cup for this girl who designed it for her grandfather with Parkinson's. Students are making things for people that they've never met across the globe. This is a website, Enabling the Future, that connects people who have 3D printers with people who need prosthetic devices. You can ask questions that no one has ever asked before, like, if an opposable thumb is so great, what if we had two? And that's real. That's a real thing that moves. And the video's not working, but it actually moves. In the wristband are the electronics for that, and the plans are online. Because there's a whole world of people out there, including some people who are probably 11 to 15 years old, who are going to help make that better. When you add computation, you add feedback, and you add control, you bring it to a whole nother level. There's a whole range of microcomputers that children can add and make things smart, make things interactive, and program themselves. This is not adults making things to watch children or to teach children. This is about children taking charge of things that they consider important. Things like robots, things like gloves that read sign language with sensors and movement back to the computer. That dress is a pollution-sensing gown. Those ballet slippers track dance movements. And every one of these projects, and that's a key term for schools, projects, takes a little bit of time, but uses the same engineering design process, right? This is not about dumbing down things because girls like sewing and boys like robots. This is about finding the engineering in anything that interests you. If you're a ballet dancer, if you're a fashion designer, if you're interested in language, if you're interested in robots, you can use the design process of something that's in your head coming to life and being made real. And then when it starts to work, you can fix it and make it better. That's engineering. And that's a process that can be embedded into curriculum and teach kids things that we've always wanted them to know. And in fact, make a lot of those abstract concepts more concrete. You can make things that solve problems in your everyday life, in your community, or you can make things just for fun. A lot of schools are using things like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to help students find projects and find work that's meaningful. Like this school in Hawaii that took on the challenge of understanding invasive species in its own backyard. And this is a project that every student in the school can participate in. It's local, it's global. The kindergartners can help make nets and count fish. The third graders can sort them into buckets. The 12th graders can collaborate with scientists. All of these things are real. And if you think that that doesn't make an impact, it does. This school has changed the percentage of invasive species in this stream. One stream, one river, one ocean, one world. The idea is that students can be agents of change, not objects to change. And that this can happen today. Students can be engineers, they can be scientists, they can be historians, they can be musicians. They can be today, not learn about, where someday we're going to have these wonderful smart cities and they're going to be populated by people. Well, that can happen today, right? The things we're all working for, we can add kids who can be our allies and our advocates for these ideas. So how do these maker projects really impact education? Seymour Papert said, and he was someone who invented the first programming language for children, he said if you use technology to make things, you can make a lot more interesting things, and you can learn a lot more by making them. And I'm going to add, if you're an educator, watching someone make interesting things gives you a lot of information as well. You can learn by watching someone else make interesting things. You can watch how they handle adversity. You can listen to them. You can ask them a challenging question at the right time. You can certainly learn more than watching them take a test. So I think the maker movement brings a lot to schools. I think it means that you can do a lot more things. You can do them today. You can make real things that work. You can make things you care about. You can make things more precisely than ever before, and you can learn more by making them. So what's not to love, right? Schools should be so excited about the maker movement. Now, is that true? Not always. Because these projects can be complicated. They don't always work. When you invent something, you don't get it right the first time. Where does that extra time come from to do an iterative design process? What happens when you have a test on Friday and you're supposed to start your new unit next Monday? That's the conflict. That's the problem. This uncertainty is something that schools don't love. Hate's a strong word. But schools do not love uncertainty. Most institutions don't love uncertainty. But isn't that, I think the answer, though, is that just because something makes school uncomfortable doesn't mean it's wrong. It means we have to work out the kinks. And that's what disruption is. Disruption is this tension. It's not just this wipes out everything that went ahead of it. It's a tension between what we're doing today and what we might do tomorrow. All these infinite possibilities of what we could do with kids in school. And it just seems kind of hard to choose between all these possibilities. I think, though, that schools need to move forward with this. They need to embrace this uncertainty, to figure out how to deal with things that take an unknown amount of time, where students are doing things and they're not sure exactly they're all going to be doing the same thing. In fact, they know they're not going to all be doing the same thing. And how do we know what kids know? How do we know what they're learning? We have to embrace that that is learning, that we don't always know, that when people learn things, it's happening inside of their own heads. It's not something we're doing to kids. It's happening inside their heads. All learning is personalized learning. Every single person learns in a completely different way, building on their own existing experiences. And when we can start to embrace this, we can embrace the future and help kids be the people that they're going to be today. So this kind of innovation, I'm not saying we throw away everything that works. We've got tons of people that we're standing on the shoulders of giants like Piaget, who told us that knowledge is a consequence of experience. He didn't say knowledge is a consequence of people telling you something. Knowledge is a consequence of experience. And that experience has to be deep and personal. Maria Montessori said, never help a child at a task at which he feels he can succeed. She didn't say, unless we run out of time, and then we just hurry him along and tell him how to do it. So it takes time. It takes the art of teaching is not hurrying and not telling and not talking. It's watching children with a careful eye. It's watching children to see those signs of learning and nurture those seeds as they're happening. We could fill this room with research too, that active learning practices are the thing that helps students understand content. This is a study from Stanford University and the Lemon Center in Brazil. Active learning practices have more significant impact on achievement than any other variable. Even student background, even prior achievement. This kind of making, this kind of hands-on science with a purpose helps girls get interested and stay interested in science. We know this for a fact. MIT is now saying you can submit a portfolio as part of the admissions process. So we can start to say that colleges aren't the ones aren't the ones at fault. It's not the colleges who are forcing us to make kids take too many tests. Harvard University is studying maker empowerment and what that means as a sensitivity towards the designed aspects of the world. But, you know, I know it when I hear it from kids, and I talk to kids all the time. I'm happy to be on the side of Stanford and Harvard and MIT. That's lovely. But when I hear from kids who say things like, I can do things really quickly now that I know how to look at stuff. That's a really profound way to say it, right? Simple, but profound. He's talking about mindfulness. He's talking about craftsmanship. He's talking about caring about the things he's looking at, not just, oh, you know, can I get this done and then go out to play. And I hear kids bring this care to the world. Kids care. They want to change the world. They want to understand how they fit in this thing that's happening all around them. And I go to a lot of technology conferences, and people say to me, oh, you're so right, technology is so empowering for kids, it's so engaging, they love to click on stuff. I'm like, no, it's not what I'm talking about. Empowerment comes from doing powerful things. Powerful things that you care about in a community that cares about you. Engagement in a task comes internally. You can't do engagement to kids. You can't do empowerment to kids. It's a cycle that I believe is extremely powerful. When students do things they care about, they become empowered, they feel like they belong, they have a sense of purpose, they gain voice, they learn to trust themselves, that their ideas are good, and that they can take step forwards to make them come true. They learn to take responsibility. And that's called citizenship. Citizenship is a two-way street of being a part of something that cares about you and that you care about, which I think is a missed opportunity for many digital citizenship courses, where we're just telling the kids the bad things that will happen to them when they misbehave. Citizenship should be a two-way street. It's a two-way contract between us and kids. And I also know that you can't have empowered students without empowered teachers. Teachers who are in charge of their curriculum, teachers who are in charge of their own classroom. And I know that in the Nordic countries, you're striving towards this. America is falling away from this. America is a terrible example of the kinds of things that are possible. I think that you have opportunities here in the countries that you represent to do amazing things and give teachers and give kids agency over their own learning. And it may sound scary and it may sound hard, but it's completely doable. When Gary Steger and I do professional development, we always start with what the teachers do. The teachers build things, the teachers make things, because when you start to feel what it feels like to be a learner again, you start to be able to make those experiences happen in your own classroom. It always starts with the do. When we do have students who are going to participate in these smart cities of the future, I think they'll want to use the tools that they were taught to use in schools. So that the earlier we can prepare them with understanding how sensors work, that we can test the world around us, that we can take the data and make it personal and make it real for ourselves, these kids will help us achieve these goals. So let's see if this video works.
We are at the power plant for Sylvia.
The dust is coming down.
With this technology, we are developing tools that you can use for your need.
Breathing health, problem like cancer.
The cancer? Do you have a lot of people with cancer?
Yes.
What does it mean? This means people meeting every week in our place, basically looking at an issue that proposals that they had on their neighborhood. And so we're teaching them how they can use sensors to monitor the noise, how they can make the sensors, how they can look at the data, towards basically using data, using sensors, using technology to create awareness about a local problem that might happen on a city.
This is a trailer for a new project called Making Sense across the EU. It's giving people sensors. They're putting sound sensors up in their own neighborhoods. It's training the communities to use the tools of the maker movement to collect data, to create the communities that they want to create. And I think that these kinds of tendencies are normal. People want to live in better places. Well, how do they know what that means? There's technology available today that's increasingly affordable where we can say we have the data. We know what to do. We can prove that what we do works. And these kinds of citizen science experiments, I think, are the future. Kids can be part of these things today. Kids can be making and doing and creating today. Paulo Freire said, education means to help children grasp the consciousness of the possible. And I think that's a beautiful saying, the consciousness of the possible, because they're the ones who are going to create the possible. If we help them understand what's possible, if we help them create these futures, it will benefit all of us. So if there's one thought I can leave you with today, it's that when you hear about making an education, it's not about a shopping list. It's not about buying the right special 3D printer. It's not about building a special room. It's a stance towards learning that gives kids agency over the world in which we live. It gives them the mindset, it gives them the tools to make sense of the world and to change the world, because every kid wants to change the world, and it is their world. With that, Tusen Takk, I thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.